Jessie Redmon Fauset. Fauset was a female African-American novelist, poet, editor, essayist, and literary critic in the early 20th century, specifically having most of her prominent works occur during the Harlem Renaissance. Unlike her contemporaries like Zora Neale Hurston and Alan Locke, Fauset has been largely left out of discussions regarding influential figures of the Harlem Renaissance. In addition to not receiving much recognition and credit during her career as a writer, Claire Auberon Garcia, a professor of English and the director of Race, Ethnicity, and Migration Studies at Colorado College, said there is little to no scholarship on Fauset's early short stories, travel writing, book reviews, translations, sketches, and reporting. Although she did not receive many credits during her career, Langston Hughes acknowledged her importance in his 1940 autobiography, The Big C, where he called Fauset one of the three people who midwifed the so-called new Negro literature into being, which shows how she was fundamental in the blossoming of Black literature and Black thought in the Harlem Renaissance. Like Cheryl A. Wall, the author of The Women of Harlem Renaissance, said, "The Harlem Renaissance as we know it would not have been possible without her participation." She was born on April 27, 1882 in Fredericksville, which is located in Camden County, New Jersey. Shortly after Fauset was born, her mother died, which led her father to remarry and move the family to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In later personal statements, Fauset claimed the city as her birthplace and home. She attended the prestigious Philadelphia High School for Girls, where it is highly likely that she was the only Black student at the institution. After excelling in high school, she set her sights on attending Redmon, which was not willing to break the color barrier for her. However, the admissions office helped her gain a scholarship to the already integrated Cornell University, where she graduated Phi Beta Kappa as a classical language major. The Philadelphia school system rejected her because of her race and gender. Undaunted, she took a job as a French and Latin teacher in Baltimore at a segregated school called Douglas High School. Then for several years until 1919, she became a French teacher at a school called M Street High School in Washington, D.C. While teaching, she began contributing her literary works of poetry, short stories, reviews, and essays to the crisis, including poems like On You and short stories like Emmy, which touch upon the modern complexities of race, gender, and class in terms of identity and politics. W.E.B. Du Bois was very impressed by her work that in 1919 he persuaded her to leave her teaching job at Washington, D.C. to move to Harlem to become the literary editor for the crisis. Also in that same year, she earned her master's degree in French at the University of Pennsylvania. As literary editor of the journal from 1919 to 1926, she discovered many then unknown Black authors, like Countee Cullen, Langston Hughes, Claude McKay, Jane Tomer, George Schuler, and so much more, and helped bring them into prominence on a national level by molding and publishing their early works. For instance, she published Hughes' first poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, and Gwendolyn Bennett's debut poem, Nocturne. Additionally, she would encourage the voices of Black women authors on her pages like Zora Neale Hurston, Nilla Larsen, and Alice Dunbar Nelson. She became a notable presence in the artistic scene of Harlem, which began hosting salons for Black artists, writers, and intellectuals. In The Big C, Hughes states that at her 7th Avenue apartment, she would host literary soirees with much poetry. Fauset edited and wrote for the Brownies book, which was published monthly by the NAACP from 1920 to 1921 to encourage Black children's creativity and teach them about their heritage. This journal was the information Fauset wished she had as a child. While maintaining her position as editor of the crisis, she still continued to write. After her journeys in Africa, she wrote The Gift of Laughter, made in 1924, which is an essay that explores the reasons behind Black actors being forced into stereotypical roles, which became featured in Alan Locke's famous anthology, The New Negro. After reading a stereotypical portrayal of a conflicted Black identity written by a white author, Fauset was inspired to write a more authentic and convincing portrayal of the Black experience and published her first novel, called There Is Confusion, in 1924. This novel, and all her other novels after this, have an embedded theme of middle-class, light-skinned Black individuals dealing with self-hatred due to their race, and sometimes longing to be white through passing, while also facing the harshness of racial prejudice. Her writing can be best summarized by her quote in her 1922 essay, Some Notes of Color, where she stated that the tendency of the white world to judge us always at our worst, and our own realization of that fact, and so the puzzling, tangling, nerve-wracking consciousness of color envelops and swallows us, some of us it smothers. Also in 1924, she went to Paris to study at the Sorbonne and received a certificate from there, and in 1926, she decided to leave the crisis and unsuccessfully attempted to become a proofreader at a big New York publishing house. After leaving the crisis, she published her most successful book, Plum Bun, in 1928, and released The Chinaberry Tree at Novel American Life in 1931 and Comedy American Style in 1933, which were both less successful and less critically acclaimed. She married Herbert Harris, and they both left Harlem to settle in New Jersey, and then after her husband died, she moved to Philadelphia, where she died of heart disease on April 30th, 1961. Her legacy as a talented novelist and impeccable editor has left a revolutionary impact on Black literature and Black thought that still remains